On arrival at Orbitron, John Dwight was relieved to find himself in the company of Lena Loop. She was a knowledgeable friend of the Blue Committee and someone that he had spent some time discussing elements of cosmology with. You haven't been to Orbitron for very long, John. Let me explain some of the facts to you. I want to introduce you to the concept of a quantum cloud inner mind. Finally, I wondered for a time if I would make it out of Enchilada alive. Before the inflation of the universe that occurred a split second after a mass-energy pure quantum stable state received a word vibration, causing instability and expansion from a singularity into space-time, the unified field of energy had not yet existed long enough to break down from a superhot state to cool a little and form gravity. Without gravity to make it attract into itself, there was a natural inflation of apparently a membrane rather than a solid mass. Gravity works at the speed of light, and no interactive with mass particle waves travel faster. Before it existed, the original expanding membrane accelerated faster than light during inflation. I understood that 8 universes were drawn into a singularity, Lena. True enough, John. The singularity was in itself without time and broken down those universes into something resembling a dimensionless Bose-Einstein plasma, yet conserving information. Information external to the stable state was a stimulus opening the Big Bang, and the interval allowing the inflation after the Big Bang allows us to make inferences about the nature of space in the absence of gravity that can exist only with the breakdown of the unified field into mass and energy. How so, Lena? For one thing, we can infer that without gravity, mass and energy could not meaningfully aggregate. Without gravity, matter would not form planets or stars, and anything that existed would have no fundamental direction toward the concatenated center point of all attracted mass of the universe that is incidentally conserved. Gravity can be overcome by a greater power of a meta-universal space scale, has a different dimensional nature in the absence of gravity. Or gravity was reversed in direction after emerging from the singularity, allowing expansion of the universe as an inflation during, before flipping back around as the 4 spatial dimensions. They flattened out. At least that's how I see it, John. So the information that is a map of the location of all mass and energy, cohering within a supra-virtual quantum field, is the quantum cloud interbrane of information we interact with to understand and travel the material of the universe from time equal near zero to time equal near omega, regardless of location, Lena? Well, John, I would say that it is more like an additional location. Time is a value-added mapping element, applied somewhat like a natural atomic structure, metaphorically speaking. All of the information from the 8 universes is conserved, and all of the information of this universe is pre-known, as well as to the supermind that is God. Yes, Lena, I would think that would not be an exhaustive definition of his omniscience. If the singularity was more than a zero-dimensional point, if the start of the universe had something besides a spherical configuration, gravity might be able to prevent the release of a unified energy field from becoming mass. I think that's not quite accurate, John. Energy is not yet mass. Compacted to a singularity, it is not yet even energy. It may exist in an unknown state as pure dimensional space. If it existed within a line originally, it would be unbound in one direction and extended so far as its energy allowed. The forces of energy would be unequally bound and unstable. Mass could not form that energy. And would have singular center to return to if it could exist and were somehow to be big banged and inflated away, John. Sure, I can imagine that, Lena. If mass could be attracted to black hole conditions that were linear, the universe would be very different than it is. What about Orbitron, though, Lena? What sort of a world is it really? Orbitron is one of a few hundred artificial worlds with a double hull, protected atmosphere we have made by hollowing out planets and reconfiguring their mass. Though we inhabit the surface of these worlds, the interiors are more than chewy nougat. Just kidding, John. Each of these planets serve as training and technological development centers for free humanity, and we do not have any free-roaming spiders from the ocean here to eat or to be eaten by humans. That seems like a good idea if humanity is really threatened by the Aristarchs or sea spiders. Most certainly we are, John. Though we have invented a technology to shape space and deposit your information faster than light. There is another latent technology for faster-than-light travel, somewhat more crude than ours. Actually, we use it to form gravitational defense and concealment shields that prevent our enemies from viewing us remotely. Let me sketch it for you briefly. Waves are the result of a force traveling through a medium and temporally displacing and changing the shape of the medium. Gravitational force, on the other hand, attracts distant objects of mass rather than displacing it. That is an emergent phenomenon caused by the warp shaping what seems to be space itself, yet is actually the information of virtual space itself. Mass exists in 4 dimensions of space and affects it at even the smallest level. The more mass aggregated, the greater the concatenated information brought to the aggregation depleting space of informal times for mass. So mass is drawn, as it were, toward aggregated mass instead of disregarding it. There are no actual gravitons exchanged between mass objects as a form of energy. Instead, mass affects the information of virtual space, and in the process, liberating space of mass in some respects, we have learned to program virtual space, and unfortunately, the information exists closer to the Aristarchan Empire too. With it, one may learn to create gross and highly destructive spacetime shortcuts. Aristarchs, without doubt, being as environmentally inefficient and profligate as they are, would use that technology to attempt to enslave all of the rest of humanity beyond their present range of power in the Silky Way. And what of Orbitron, Lena? The economy of Orbitron was, of course, built without money as a medium of exchange. Money, being the root of all evil, attracts corrupt social structures to it for itself. Illegal drug sales, for example, are challenging to accomplish without the existence of money. Bartering or trading commodities directly for illegal drugs would create quite an inefficient and unwieldy phenomenon. The 18th century inventor of capitalism created an economic philosophy well adapted to the ecospheric and sociological paradigm of his time. Yet, like the 19th century economic philosophy of Marxism, it was nothing more than a single economic philosophy. Just one degree amid 360 potential economic philosophies or directions that could be innovated or invented. Each age of human social history should discover and apply its own most rational, just, and useful economic philosophy that would serve social goals with a rational ecospheric criterion, and the latter obviously may differ quite radically. If one has a space station world, utopia with sustainable and healthy ecosphere and plentiful workstations for the design of any sort of physical structure, at least in the abstract, including the design of evolution systems for an uninhabited galaxy, there would be no need for a redistributive or trade economy within the parameters of the space station world for residents at all. Adam Smith believed that free trade could create a better life for all in his era, and he was probably right, considering the spatial extent and low population of the Earth, as well as the inefficiency of government at accomplishing most things beyond war, at which it was easily the best power. For Orbitron, free enterprise parameters have been set for all that allocate quantitative material quotas for the use of anyone with a need for material to actualize his or her inventions. Because the worlds are artificial constructions to start with, the ecosphere need to be free from destructive, non-sustainable use, obviously, though we are glad to receive ideas that would enhance its efficiency and liberate material for more innovation and inventive applications. Yes, I can understand that if someone had an ancient automobile, for example, and invented a product that ate the automobile while it was driving, that would be detrimental to the other purpose for the automobile. John Dwight then asked, how is that done, Lena? There are innumerable ways to apportion resources and examine and vet enterprise proposals before selection committees. Sure, Lena, that's easy to recognize. What is the motive for business, however, if individuals don't require capital and won't receive money for production or inventions? John, everyone on Orbitron as a sentient being within the ecosphere would be free to receive or use a new product, including the inventor-producer. In a way, it is not unlike a very primitive human economy wherein all tools were considered common and had no particular individual value and were therefore freely exchanged. It is ironic that one of the most ancient human economic ideas from the old earth works so well, so many parsecs and years distant, Lena.